So stewardship is everything we do with everything we have.
Znači, upraviteljstvo govori o svemu onome što radimo sa svim onim što imamo.
Which means that stewardship is part of our work as well.
A to znači da upraviteljstvo je deo i rada.
And I'm just going to say a few words, and we're going to run through this session because
I
we don't
reći
have
ću
time.
samo par reči jer nemamo vremena, pa moramo da protrčimo.
The Bible clearly reveals that we're created as human beings that are supposed to work.
Biblija nam jasno govori da smo mi ljudska bića koja treba da rade.
You know, Adam and Eve were given a job. They were gardeners.
I Adamu i Evi bio je dat posao. Oni su bili baštovani.
According to the Bible, this is the oldest job, the oldest profession.
I na osnovu Biblije vidimo da je to najstarije zanimanje.
And some Christians imagine that, work is a punishment for sin.
Neki hrišćani shvataju posao ili rad kao kazna za greh.
And that one day when we go to heaven, we will just be floating on pink clouds and play music on harps.
I da jednog dana kad konačno odemo u nebo, samo ćemo lebdeti na ružičastim oblacima i svirati harfe.
I don't know about you, but for me, I grew up in a Christian family.
Ne znam kako je sa vama, ali ja sam odrastao u hrišćanskoj porodici.
And when I imagined as a child, spending eternity in just singing to God,
I kad sam kao dete zamišljao raj i da čitavu večnost ću samo da pevam Bogu,
that terrified me.
to me užasavalo.
Because it's terribly boring.
Zato što je to užasno
Can you
dosadno.
imagine just singing all the time?
Zamislite da stalno samo pevate.
I want to do things. I
Ja
want
želim
to
da radim
play. I
nešto.
want to make things.
Da se igram ili da pravim.
And of course, the Bible never says that we're going to spend eternity playing harps.
I naravno nigde Biblija ne govori da ćemo čitavu večnost samo da sviramo harfe.
In fact, if you study the parable of the talents,
I zapravo ako budete proučili tu parabolu o talentima,
the award for a good steward in the parable
nagrada za dobrog upravitelja u priči
is what?
je šta?
Exactly. More management, more
Još
responsibility.
više odgovornosti.
So you grow, you're promoted,
Znači, rasteš, dobio si unapređenje,
but you're still a worker.
ali i dalje si radnik.
And the fact, what we see in the Bible is that God is a God who works.
I ono što vidimo u Bibliji jeste da je Bog koji radi.
Have you thought about the difference between the biblical portrayal of God and the one in Hellenistic religion?
Da li ste ikada razmišljali o toj razlici između biblijskog Boga, prikaza Boga i helenističkih
The
bogova?
gods in Olymp,
Bogovi na Olimpu, na primjer.
in the Greek mythology, spend their time, most of their time at least, in partying.
U grčkoj mitologiji većinu svog vremena troše na
They
žurke,
eat and drink heavenly ambrosia.
na slavlje. Oni jedu i piju nebesku ambroziju.
While the biblical God is portrayed as a creator,
Dok biblijski Bog je predstavljen kao stvoritelj,
as someone who does things.
kao neko ko radi.
And we
određene
are
stvari.
created in his likeness.
A mi smo stvoreni po njegovom obličju.
So, and the few passages that seem to indicate about eternity and the life after we die
I nekoliko odlomaka koji govore o večnosti i o našem životu nakon smrti
seem to indicate that we will continue to be creative, active beings.
ukazuju na to da ćemo nastaviti da budemo kreativne, aktivne biće.
So work is not a punishment.
I zato posao i rad nije kazna.
Work is part of our essence as human beings.
Već je to deo naše suštine kao ljudskih bića.
And the work of a Christian is to participate in the building of God's kingdom on earth.
A rad hrišćana ili delo hrišćana jeste da učestvuju u izgradnji Božjeg carstva ovde na zemlji.
How? By using the talents that God has already given us.
Kako? Tako što koriste talente koje im je Bog već dao.
Work is worship.
I rad je slavljenje.
The Apostle Paul is writing to the Colossians.
I apostol Pavle piše Kološanima.
Whatever you do,
Što god da radite,
work heartily as for the Lord
radite svesrdno kao za Gospoda,
and not for men,
a ne za ljude.
knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward.
Znajući da ćete od Gospoda primiti nasleđe kao nagradu.
You're serving the Lord Christ.
Gospodu Hristu služite.
Interestingly, the Greek word liturgy
Interesantno je da grčka reč liturgija
means work,
znači
the
rad,
work of the people.
rad naroda.
And so in a very real sense, we should be doing our work as an expression of worship.
I zato je veoma realno da naš posao obavljamo kao pokazatelj našeg slavljenja, štovanja Boga.
And there is a lot of specific things that could be said, and we don't have the time for that.
Postoji mnogo specifičnih stvari koje možemo reći ovdje, ali
But
nemamo
through the
vremena.
history of the church,
Međutim, kroz čitavu istoriju crkve,
there's been this understanding that, there are a few people that have been selected for ministry
postojalo je ovo shvatanje da je nekolicina ljudi samo izabrana za službu
or spiritual work,
ili za duhovni rad,
and the rest are just doing ordinary work.
a ostali oni samo neki običan rad.
So there is almost like two classes of people.
I od uvek je postojalo gotovo te dve klase ljudi.
Clergy,
Oni što su sveštenstvo,
those in ministry,
oni u službi
and the rest of the people.
i onda svi ostali ljudi.
That's not a biblical understanding.
A to uopšte nije biblijsko shvatanje.
Yes, there are some people who are devoted to preaching the word,
Da,
to building the church,
postoje određeni ljudi koji su posvećeni propovedanju reči, izgradnji crkve.
and so Paul is writing, show them special honor,
I Pavle im piše i kaže ukažite im posebno poštovanje,
support them financially,
podržavajte ih
And we'll talk
financijski.
about that in the
I o
afternoon.
tome ćemo govoriti popodne.
but they are not the only ones who minister.
Ali oni nisu jedini koji treba da budu služitelji.
All of us should be doing our work as if we're serving Christ.
Svi mi treba da obavljamo svoj posao i da radimo kao da služimo Hristu.
And most of us will serve him in our regular professions.
A većina nas ćemo služiti na našim redovnim poslovima.
There are exceptions, like the Apostle Paul,
Postoje izuzeci kao što je bio apostol Pavle,
who devote their time to missionary work, to just preaching, and so on.
koji su svoj život posvetili misionarskom poslu i propovedanju.
But these are exceptions. They're not the rule.
Ali to su izuzeci, a nisu pravila.
Most of the church, even during the times of the early church, Paul was among the very few that traveled. And because he was doing a unique work, he couldn't just sit and practice his profession.
Čak i u prvoj crkvi Pavle je bio jedan od jedinstvenih, jedan od manjina ljudi koji je putovao i zbog tog posla koji je obavljao nije mogao da obavlja svoj posao.
Though at times he even does that.
Mada dešavalo se da se čak vraćao i svom.
But most of the early Christians were supposed to do their job and serve Christ in the capacity of their profession.
Ali većina hrišćana u prvoj crkvi su obavljali svoje poslove i na taj način su služili
And I think
Hristu.
especially we in Eastern Europe need to reawaken again to this truth.
I mislim da posebno mi u istočnoj Evropi treba ponovo da probudimo u sebi tu istinu.
When I'm going to work, to my workplace,
Kada ja krenem na posao, na radno mesto,
and I've been working for a Christian organization only in the last 4 years. Most of my professional experience before that was I was an interpreter, a professional interpreter.
u hrišćanskoj ovoj organizaciji radim samo poslednjih 4 godine, ali do tada ja sam bio prevodilac i radio sam, to je bio moj posao.
And when I went to translate for a conference, and these were not Christian, I was working most of the time for non-Christians.
Kada bih otišao da prevodim na nekoj konferenciji, u većini slučajeva to nisu bile hrišćanske konferencije.
When I went to interpret for a conference or for a TV program, which I did,
Kada sam odlazio, znači da prevodim za konferencije ili neke TV programe,
what motivated me was I wanted to do my best.
ono što je mene motivisalo jeste da sam želeo da dam sve od sebe.
Because if I did my best,
Jer ako ja budem dao sve
I
od
would not
sebe,
only be a good witness to people,
ne samo da ću biti dobro
as a Christian,
svedočanstvo ljudima kao hrišćani,
but I will also be helping build the kingdom of God.
već ću na taj način pomoći da se izgradi carstvo Božje.
And we have so many people in our churches
I imamo tako puno ljudi u našim crkvama
that are doing a great job,
koji odlično obavljaju svoj posao,
but they feel like they're doing a secondary job to the pastors.
ali oni misle da oni obavljaju neki drugorazredni posao u poređenju sa pastorima.
While in fact,
Dok u stvari je
and I
činjenica,
don't, a pastor who does faithfully his job is doing a tremendous job.
i naravno moram da kažem da pastor koji verno obavlja svoj posao je odličan pastor.
But the truth is that in many places, people like that are doing a lot more important work than the pastor does.
Ali u mnogim slučajevima je čak istina da ljudi koji na svom radnom mestu rade i služe kao za Gospoda su mnogo veće svedočanstva nego pastor.
Women who spend some years of their life taking care of their children so that they can grow and start going to school and so on, you're preparing the next generation of people.
Žene koje kod kuće odvajaju vreme da vaspitavaju svoju decu na putu Gospodnjem, vi pripremate sledeću generaciju ljudi.
Those who work in banks, those who work in businesses, those who are professionally employed in any kind of sphere.
Oni koji rade u bankama ili neku firmu imaju ili bilo kakva vrsta poslovanja.
By the quality of work you do, you're helping the society function in a better way.
U zavisnosti od kvaliteta vašeg rada, vi pomažete da vaše društvo funkcioniše na
And
bolji
when
način.
you do your job very well,
I kada vi svoj posao obavljate jako dobro,
this will end up serving God's glory.
vi time na kraju služite Bogu na slavu.
So yeah, a lot more could be said.
Mnogo toga još može da se
We need
kaže.
to work to the best quality possible.
Znači, treba da radimo na najbolji mogući način.
I had a friend some years back
Imao sam prijatelja pre više godina
who had this idea of writing a book against evolution.
koji je imao ideju da napiše knjigu protiv evolucije.
And he wanted a couple of us to see his book and tell us what we think about it.
I on je želeo nekoliko nas da pročitamo njegovu knjigu i da mu kažemo šta mislimo od nje.
Because I was part of with several friends, we started an apologetics ministry.
Zato što ja i još nekoliko prijatelja smo započeli jednu službu apologetičku.
And I looked at his book.
I pogledao sam njegovu knjigu.
And all of us told him the same thing.
I svi smo mu zapravo rekli istu stvar.
You know, you've got a good desire,
Imaš dobru želju,
but the book is awful.
ali knjiga ti je grozna.
You don't have a good style of writing.
Nemaš dobar stil pisanja.
You have to do a lot of writing, and you know, I don't think you're reading enough to develop a good style.
Morao bi puno da pišeš, a čini mi se i da ne čitaš dovoljno da bi razvio dobar stil pisanja.
Second, you don't know English, neither German.
Drugo, ne znaš ni engleski ni nemački.
So you don't really know the most current ideas in the area in which you're writing.
Tako da zapravo nisi upućen u trenutne ideje o toj temi o kojoj želiš da pišeš.
You know, you're writing arguments that have already been answered a long time ago.
Ti pišeš neke argumente na koje su već odavno dati odgovor.
You just don't know it because you can't use that literature.
Ti samo ne znaš ništa o tome zato što
And
ne
basically
koristiš tu
we told him,
literaturu.
forget about it, do something else.
Tako da smo mu u suštini rekli, zaboravi na to, radi nešto drugo.
And there were believers present at the meeting, and they said, why do you tell him so?
I bilo je vernika na tom sastanku koji su nas pitali, kako ste mu to rekli, zašto?
He's doing it for the Lord.
On to radi za Gospoda.
And I constantly see this. People seem to think that if you're doing it for the Lord, any quality is good.
I ja stalno to vidim među hrišćanima. Ako radiš nešto za Gospoda, onda bilo koji kvalitet je dobar.
You know, you get someone who barely knows how to play the guitar,
Imaš nekoga koji jedva zna kako da svira na gitari,
but because they're doing it for the Lord,
ali pošto on to želi da radi za Gospoda,
we encourage them. Oh,
mi ih
wonderful,
ohrabrujemo.
beautiful.
Odlično sviraš, divno.
And instead of helping us worship, they're in some cases they're actually distracting us from worship.
I umjesto da nam pomognu da uđemo u slavljanje Boga, oni nas u stvari odloče nam pažnju i ne možemo da uđemo u to slavljanje.
If someone has the gift and they just need time to develop it, it's okay.
Ako neko ima dar i vidi se da ima dar i potrebno mu je vreme da to razvija, onda je u redu.
But if someone clearly doesn't have the gift, please don't waste your time.
Ali ako je jasno da neko nema dara u tom polju, nemoj da traćiš svoje vreme.
Do what God has gifted you for.
Radi ono za što te je Bog nadario.
It is because you're doing it for the Lord
Jer upravo zato što to želiš da radiš za Gospoda,
that you should be doing it with the best quality,
treba i da radiš na najbolji mogući način,
not the other way around.
a ne da bude obrnuto.
And we need to practice our work with absolute honesty.
I moramo da radimo svoj posao apsolutno pošteno
And in harmony with the values of the kingdom.
i u skladu sa vrednostima carstva.
And we could take a whole hour to
I sada bi
talk just
mogli
about
čitav
that.
sat vremena da govorimo samo o tome.